Welcome to Destiny Movie Night. Tonight we are discussing a musical actually. The title is Les Misérables, and this is a live discussion. Anyone can ask questions during the hangout, and there is this Q&A section, and you can ask questions about the story, about musical, about the discussion, anything. And we have guests here, Yogan. Hi, Yogan.
Hi, Talman.
And to be honest, it was a fascinating experience because for me, this was the first musical I've seen. And I was more into this kind of movie mindset before. And I was surprised that it was so enjoyable. The characters and the sounding and the singing and the story, it was quite profound experience. So anyone who just judged that musical is not for them, I might say that Les Miserables can be a start because it's a fascinating story, and I even say acting was quite good on the stage, and the singing, it was so professional and profound, and so much deepness I found within myself as well. So we can just start with the story, maybe, if you want to start, Yogan.
Sure.
Cool.
So, yeah, it's definitely complex and rich and lots of details involved. Even watching it the first time, you may not understand it. So it's like, for me, I had to watch it 2 or 3 times. So now I have to try to provide a summary for this. So it's a little bit difficult. But very basically, it's like, I'm not even sure the time period, maybe like 1800s in France. In a situation where a lot of people are in poverty, and you have all these different characters that are involved in this situation. You have characters, I'll say this very metaphorically. You have characters where the character represents like the law, like, what's right, what's just. You have characters that represent religion as a Christian values and what's right. And you have people who represent like rebellion as a revolution to change the poverty situation. And you have other people that are examples of, I guess, love, like a love-struck couple. And, another example would be a mother who loves her daughter so much, and she's in poverty, and she actually turns to prostitution to support her daughter financially. I mean, within all this, there's lots of interactions of the characters. There's lots of interesting interactions, and I won't say too much because I also don't want to ruin the story, but we're going to go in detail to it as well. So also, I guess, spoiler alert as well for anyone watching this. So I think a lot of people would find something that they would enjoy and could relate to in some way. Okay.
Yeah, and also the singing, many times it was quite catchy, like easy to go into your mind and then just catch yourself like phrasing it or singing it, because it's so easy and nicely done together. And sometimes it's so contradiction, because even the beginning, like I have this reference for the lyrics, like look down, how long, O Lord, before you let me die? How long you always be a slave? You are standing in your grave. So it's like sounds so good and so great and so profound, yet the lyrics and the meaning is so deep and dark, and so it was a really intense experience. And yeah, it's within an era when slavery is still accepted and the law and religion is everything, and people are really trying to change the system. So many angles within the story is about how people gather together and then try to change. And it was fascinating. And we can even start with the sort of main character, Jean Valjean.
Mm-hmm.
And how you would describe him?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Jean Valjean. So let's give a little description. or let's go into his character. So in the very beginning, his background is like he stole he went to go break into a house to steal bread, and he was stealing the bread for his sister who had a child, and he ends up getting caught, and he's getting sent to jail for that, and he gets sentenced, I think, for 5 years, and then he tries to escape because he feels it's unjust, and he ends up getting the prison sentence set to 20 years. And at the very end, he finally gets a parole, and by the end of it, he's just bitter and just resentful and thinks the whole world's against him, which in a way kind of is. And he's just very, like, I guess they could say, low point in his life. It's just, it's just nothing he can do. And even on top of that is when he tries to get a job, people pay him less because he's a parolee, an convicted convict. And he's just, frustrated.
Yeah, pretty much.
You want to talk what happens next?
What was interesting for me, like this duel with the inspector, Javert, and how the two characters are like sort of what you mentioned before, like we discussed before, and then you mentioned that they are trying to represent the same values or same principles, yet they are getting conflict each other. That was interesting. If you can talk about that.
They're like, so Javert, he's like the inspector. He's responsible for Jean Valjean during his parole. And so basically, like Tom was saying, they're like two opposites, right? They're like two forces, sort of one representing Javert, the law, and the other person, well, he actually, like I was saying before, he was very bitter, but he goes through a transformation where he becomes, let's say, more religious and like serves God. And Javert also stands within the same principle as well, like serving God through the law, through what's right and what's just. And so they both have, so you have these two men who think they're serving God, and they're in conflict with each other because one is seeing it purely through the side of what's the law, what's written, and follow what's set before you by society, and the other one is, well, I guess I really have to get into the story, but he's getting more, Jean Valjean is more trying to do what's right within how things are, but not necessarily just seeing it purely through the law. One example is in the very beginning, like when I was talking with his parole, he gets help from a bishop, from like a church, and the bishop, takes care of him, gives him food, and he decides to steal silver from the bishop, from the church, and he ends up getting caught by some soldiers or some, policemen, I don't know, and he gets brought back, and instead of the bishop sort of like ratting him out, the bishop decides to give him even more silver, and he makes it sort of like an act of kindness to like change Jean Valjean's heart, change of heart and how he sees things. And he, through that experience in the story, he goes through some transformation where he then, sort of devotes himself to doing what's right, doing what's just, to be an honest man, as they say. So, then, he goes through that process, which in the story, he becomes like a owner of a factory, and he becomes like a mayor of a town, whatever, like years in the story. So, I mean, within that, and it's going really deep. So there's like 2 points in where he shows that demonstration of him actually following like that point of integrity, is when he sees another man who's going to be convicted in his place. Because I understand that he broke his parole, and so he's a wanted convict on the run, basically. And he goes, finds this a success, being a business owner in a different city, being a mayor. Then he sees someone else who's going to be sent to trial in his place, and he feels guilty, and he wants to not let this other man go in his place. So he decides to go to the inspector and tell them like, I'm actually the guy, he's not the guy. And of course he still runs because he doesn't want to get caught. And he actually ends up, it gets more complicated than that, but that's like one example, where he knows that he didn't do really what's wrong, but he also doesn't want to let someone else take the fall for him. So in this whole crazy story and context, yes, he's standing for integrity for what he could do, and what he saw was right and just, and not just let someone else take the fall for him, which is cool within that, in his life, in his context.
Yeah, and it has to be like a big decision because he was then kind of responsible for many people's jobs, so to speak, because he was
Yes.
the owner of the factory, and he still can decides what to do in regarding to his principles, so to speak.
Yeah. So yeah, that's for me. Yeah, that's kind of difficult. I don't know if I would do that, because you're thinking, well, all these people without the factory workers, they're going to be without him. What they're going to do? But I mean, his decision was that, like, sort of absolutely, like, to not let another guy fall for him, take the fall. I guess taking it one step further, I mean, he gets involved with the character Fantine, who is what I mentioned in the beginning. There's this woman, a mother, who ends up turning to prostitution to support her daughter. And so that's the character Fantine, and Fantine was working at his factory, and through some mistake, she gets fired just for like some silly reason. And he could have sort of prevented that, but he didn't know. And then she turns to prostitution, then she has her whole scenes. It's very interesting how they go into that, where, usually, we don't look at prostitution about that side of things so much, and I guess in general movies and stories. It is very interesting to look at that. How, basically, she hates what she's doing, but she has to do it, and it's a point of just pure survival, and she does it for her daughter. And, she does it into a point where, I mean, as far as I understand the story, she doesn't really have enough for herself to take care of herself. And she's like, basically she gets like sick, and then Jean Valjean, this character, he finds her, and he sort of realizes what he did by, sort of letting her get fired in a way. And he finds out she has a daughter, and then he vows to take care of the daughter because now she's dying. And then he, from that point on, he goes on to like take care of the daughter and raise her as his own. And that's another point of integrity points. The whole, I guess, within the religion, with the Christian values, and within the context, within his power. I mean, he had money, he could do that, so he went to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I see a connection. Like he already seen the sort of dark side of the being a human, because he was so poor he couldn't even almost live. So he had this kind of dual seeing, like seeing that having a factory, like being sort of rich, and meanwhile also had like a first person experience being really poor, and what does actually to people, and what compromises people has to do. And it was a cool reference for me. It was also intense because I'm coming sort of poor environment, and I've seen so many compromises myself. So I can understand when people wanting to change and wanting to change the system, and goes into this desperate anger, sort of what we can see like manifesting within the revolution of the students. And also Jean Valjean can stands also as an example, sort of. And also I see that we can notice this revolution. Basically, I'm hopefully not spoiling at this moment, but the revolution is getting sort of killed. So everyone in the revolution dies, and it's also showing that how anger and then this following the negative emotions can just go to not really to the solution. It was a cool example that we shouldn't do, just go outside and then burn everything, because the system will not tolerate. And in my view, I'm not sure, you can correct me, like Jean Valjean tries to in a peaceful way to help, and then the revolution guys try to do it with the anger starting point, and it didn't go well, as we can see.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting point also. And also I had this reference, like growing up within this anger and frustration that I cannot get what I want, and seeing others actually get. And it was really a process to walk through when I was introduced with the Desteni I process, and realizing that I can write down and slow down in my mind and realize that actually it is part of my own problem now, not the poverty, but this emotional fog I had. So as long as I am emotionally influenced, I am not really even seeing the possible solution right in front of me. So it was a cool point to recognize within the musical as well. And anyone is facing compromises and poverty should realize that always common sense and coming back to physical reality is more close to a possible solution than becoming angry and these kind of things. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to note this point.
It's and really cool.
Yeah, I think it's really important because many people are, especially not in the Western part, they are facing some really intense limitations financially, and then by that within education. And more we can realize that through internet, through Desteni I process, we can say that we can educate ourselves and then face our own minds. And also, as I see this whole character set we have this within this musical, it's like aspects of our mind and many compartmentalized points. Like there is this principle, there is this love aspect, and there is this I don't know, law following. You can follow if you want.
Yeah. So just to expand on what you're saying. So yeah, in this musical, all the characters are in a way extreme. I mean, it's not to say that these people can't sort of exist in real life, but they are kind of in a way, in a kind of way one-dimensional. Like they're very extreme in what they're and who they are. I mean, some characters are exceptions, but you can see there's, for example, this one group, this wife and her husband. They're the innkeeper, the people who took care of Cosette. They're called the Thénardiers.
Yeah,
they're very greedy, and they're very, in a way, nasty, and they're very selfish, like in the extreme. Like they're only for themselves, and that's it. Like there's no other dimensions of them in the story. So that's an extreme case, and that's even though we may not embody that 100%, but that's still an aspect of who we are, and some moments of who we are. And the same thing throughout all the characters. You have the love-struck couple, so you can relate to that. One character that I relate to a lot is the Eponine character, who has a secret crush on Marius, and she fantasizes to be with him, but she never ends up being with him. He's in love with Cosette, so then she's sort of like, I guess, in a third wheel kind of sense. So I mean, is it really interesting about this musical is how all these different characters, we can sort of relate to them in some way, and it just reveals very interesting aspects, which is why I think maybe it's so popular, is because people can relate to that so much, and it brings up memories or emotions and situations. So that's pretty cool that it does that. And also as a point of self-reflection as well, to even know who you are, and also your how you feel, and your memories, and what patterns you have as well. It's also cool for self-reflection as well.
Can you talk about a bit more about when you had this crash? What did you experience, and eventually what was the solution for you to walk through?
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, Eponine, she's like, there's a scene especially where she's singing that she's on her own, she's walking the streets of Paris, and all she's doing is she's imagining Marius is here with her, and she even says in the lyrics that like I know this isn't real. Yeah, this is the only time basically I feel happy, and I know this is but a dream. And in the morning, I'm like wake up and like none of this is real. I mean, she's aware of that. It's like very aware in the lyrics, and I could sort of relate to that sense of knowing it's just a fantasy, knowing that you're like imagining being with the person, your crush, your fantasy, and within your mind, and still doing it anyway. It's like, it's really like how the characters portray. It's kind of like a hopeless, yet at the same time self-gratifying, because it provides in a way kind of like I want to say a perverted sense of pleasure, because in your mind it seems surreal, yet when you come to reality, you sort of then enter into your depression and your own like negativity, So, I mean, I can relate to that, especially going through high school and growing up. I remember having like different like crushes like that, where it's like, it was really that intense, and it's just,
One after another. You had many? You had the multiple ones?
Wait, what I sort of noticed is that like it's just one character I had, right? It's just like one thing inside of me, and the person, it was just different people filling the slots of it. It's not like personal. It's like it's just whoever was like the object because they happen to be nearest to me, or like in my environment every day, or like at my school. It's kind of like, when I would move on, then I move on. I mean, So I mean, even though each person is still like was like a memory attached to them, like sort of like a resonant memory still there. That's very interesting to see as well. Within that's still like the same thing that's happening. So yeah, I mean, through writing, I've looked at different aspects of this, different dimensions. I mean, it relates a lot to relationships and attraction. It's really within my writing, within looking at it for myself, like it is somewhat complex because there's different sides to it. So I mean, I like recently was looking at attraction, looking at that point where within each person, when you have that attraction, there is like something for you to realize about yourself that you actually want and desire to live, but you haven't really lived it yet. And so your sort of obsession with this person is that sort of that result of not living it, yet you sort of see it within someone else.
Like projecting out the whole idea of what you want to experience.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually like really recent material released recently on the Self and Living store, which is part of the support material for Desteni. And so if someone wants to check that out, they could check that out. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of support for anyone who can relate to what I'm saying. So I would definitely, a huge step would be to sign up for Light DesteniIProcess.com. That's the course to support you within the writing and how to approach your minds.
Yes, and the links are or will be in the description below soon. So anyone wants to find out what could be like a self-supporting online course solution, then one should just check out the links below. I also had some sort of crash within high school, but for me was like almost hopeless, and I couldn't live out. And then at university, I reproduced the whole experience, as you said, that I was moving on. And then for me, it was like I couldn't let it go. Like I was really obsessed. So even 1 year after the experience, I was letting go. Then I reapproached the girl, and then we actually came together. But I was different then, and she was already different. So it was like a weird thing, but still, it didn't go well, of course, because it was mostly lived in the mind. But the most self-revealing point was like becoming so much obsessed that I was ready to give away all of my life, who I was before or what I wanted to do, just because this experience with her, that it was quite nonsense. So it supported me also to realize that it's a mindfuck, basically.
Yeah. It's like very interesting. Like I could talk about that for a while.
Yeah.
How there's like one little thing just to say how when you're in it, you're kind of like so in it that you sort of don't realize what you're doing or what's going on. And I think that's why it's so important to receive the support and what we have available here, because that's what really is, that's sort of like the game changer. Something that actually changes your situation. Because before, your life has always been what it's always been like, and your life is always going to be the same way it's going to be unless you introduce something new or unless you change something in it. So I don't know, that's the thing that's really important, because within that experience for me, it was like kind of so deep within it, like I didn't even really know what was going on. That's pretty cool that I can see that now and say that. So that I think that's really cool. This is what I've walked so far with the writing and everything, the Desteni I process.
Really cool. Yeah, also like you can recognize now the pattern you would go on, and then you see that, yeah, this will be not really cool because it's not leading anywhere. And then, yeah, I had this experience even recently, and then I was able to see that, yes, I am seeing what I am doing, and I am actually deceiving myself with this sort of addiction in my mind, like going into this kind of daydreaming rather than finding practical, real life living.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And also in relation to the change you mentioned, like I see that people really want to change and then really want to change the system, as in the story, and they wanted to really fight for the change instead of realizing what change they should focus within themselves, like finding the integrity point or stopping the emotions. No one really considering this point. Like if I would stop the emotion, I might see the practical common sense then.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you have like, the students who want to see the poverty all around them, who see all this hardship and pain and suffering, and their solution is to have all the people rise up in pairs and overtake the people who are oppressing them, and fix everything like that. So in a very forceful revolution, which would be violence with guns and soldiers and fighting in the streets. So in the story, it's a failed revolution, meaning that there's no uprising, that the people who tried to make it uprising just die, and that's it. And within that, there's a very, let's say here that there's a song that's very that's very popular in the musical, which is like,
you can sing.
I'm trying to remember now. I wrote it here and I forget. Do you hear the people singing the song of angry men? That's the start of the song. And it's just, that song, the start of it's like, anger, it's like, so there's like 2 points of view to that, like, in the way, like, yeah, like, there is something, you can see why there's angry men. You see there's poverty and there's like, things are unacceptable. Yeah, and the other side as well, it's like the anger turns into violence, basically. So it's really the anger controlling the people in that sense, where violence becomes justified, and it's worth killing these soldiers, and all these different situations, and it becomes like a war story in a way, like just trying to be a hero, trying to be a martyr, and and it's like, instead of course, we've sort of seen the, I'm going to explain a little bit now, because, for some people, maybe that is the only way. Maybe that's the only way that they see it's possible, is through uprising. So just provide a perspective that, instead of doing uprising, which would lead to, many deaths and just basically at the end, disorganization, which you won't really have a plan to how to actually live together, to actually have a society that makes sure that everyone has, what they need, and have not even that, but also have things that are that would be dignified for a human being to have. So not just basic necessities, but also, you know, in a way, things that help you be who you really are and like really live to your fullest. And so if you don't have a plan for that, and all you want to do is have a revolution, and then at the end of your revolution, let's say you won, you know, what are you gonna do now? You know, it's like, so that's sort of the good point that's missed is, you know, to have like a plan of how you're gonna organize, what you're gonna do. And within that, once you sort of understand that that's really the problem, is that there's never really been a system or an alternative really what to do, then you sort of start realizing that, well, you don't actually need a revolution. All you need is to have the majority of people support you to understand the plan and be willing to carry it out. Because if you have the most of the people with you, then you just create that way of living together, you know?
Yeah, no need to fight.
Yeah, and then that would be democracy, you know? And if you think about it, I mean, I'm going to go a little deeper, but, you know, when you fight a war, usually people who have the most number of people win. So it's kind of like war is kind of like an archaic form of democracy in that kind of sense. But we know it's not necessary because, you know, every day we live with decisions we can make as, you know, together. You know, it's kind of like a democratic, cooperative conversation as a group about what to do, what's best for everyone in the group. And, you know, that's all you really need. And then the main thing is everyone wants to act in it, so they go ahead and take the actions, and that's it. No need for violence, no need for guns, no need for fighting, just discussion, you know. And yeah.
Yeah, I can already seeing that the external violence and fight, how it can relate also the inner conflict and friction. And basically I am fighting, like I want to be like a peaceful living being, but it feels like I am not allowed. So I am getting frustrated through these expectations I have, like I want to live like a happy, loving life, but I cannot. So I am like becoming more frustrated and angry and agitated. And then I don't know what to do. And it's like from inside go outside. And at the moment I let it go out, it will be consequence to others as well. Like the point I want to say that with the good starting point, so to speak, I am losing my own battle already, because I am losing the battle because I am going to be angry and violent, so to speak, what I wanted to avoid at the first place, to just live my peaceful life. Mm-hmm. So I see that it starts with the inner conflict to see and stop. Because if I stop fighting with myself, then I can just settle down and see the facts, and then I don't see anger as practical or even as solution.
Yeah, I mean, with what you just said right now, the same thing with fighting with other people. One of the first steps is to have communication, to actually talk to the people and learn and understand them and listen to them and talk with them. So the same thing with yourself. It's also to approach who you are with understanding, with learning, with listening, and being able to understand. And it's like a whole process involved, like in a way, which mirrors how ideally we would act with other people. So what you're saying now, it's like, yeah, you have to go through that process of self-understanding, self-realization, working with yourself, cooperating, and yeah, it's like really, it parallels very well with how we should act ideally with each other.
Yeah, and it also starts with the communication with myself, but not through the thoughts and emotions as I perceive that it should be the best, but real communication, like understanding why I am having these reactions, or real knowing, like I know already what I would do, and I also am able to see the consequences, what I can prevent if I just stop participating for a moment. And then that expanding to others, like speaking with other, I don't know, poor people, or even understanding the starting point of the system, why they try to fight down the slaves or the students. It must be difficult, because it was in a difficult time, we can say, because it was sort of dark age 200 years before, but I'm sure that after 200 years from now, they would say the same for us, because it's quite relevant. As I see that we have riots, sort of revolutions. Just it seems like it's more twisted with this information era we are within, like who started, who was with who, or who initiated, or we don't see the starting point, but still comes from individuals accumulating to big movements. It was really a relevant point within this story for me as well.
Yeah, it's very relevant to today. I would say everything that happens in the story. So I feel like, yeah, it's like really, I think that's why it's still very, like, it's so popular too, because people relate to that. I guess, I'll say this.
How should we close the discussion? With common sense or support? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for like, honestly, like if someone's who's, found this by accident and just really interested in what we're talking about and wants to learn more, really the best place is to start with the course, because when you're doing self-reflection and trying to understand who you are, in the beginning it's like a storm in a way. It's like, you really don't know what you're doing. That's why writing is so important, because just the very act of writing is very, very supportive. It's not so much important to understand why, but more to actually show it for yourself and actually work with it, and to do within a structure that we have with the course. That's like my number one advice for everyone all the time, because there's really nothing better. Yeah.
And also the self-living, it's really cool, because there are many interviews pointing to also anger and relationship and this kind of love, or this new about understanding attraction is really supporting, and anyone can download it, and it can give some perspective to understand how can we support ourselves and others then. So we could be more prepared than the people within the story, actually. And change ourselves, and then through that whole history, I don't know. Sounds big, but we are actually living the same patterns as them, as I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone is just a reflection.
Yes.
Of ourselves. So yeah, it's like, even within stories, it's like, that's kind of like what stories do. It's like helps you to see deeper into yourself. It's cool.
Yes, and also one, if starts to, like we do, like watching a story or a musical or a movie, seeing it like with this perspective, that what it reflects back to me or to society, or what are the hidden agendas or the meanings, or the, I don't know, like reflection or outline of the current life we have, then many stories or movies can be just self-support. What we react to, how I am reacting, like looking to me, like what is the origin, a source point. It's really cool, and changing perspective. So it's not like just entertainment, but it's self-support already. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's why we say, like, it's not about what you do, but who you are within what you do. So it's who you are within watching the musicals, entertainment, because then you actually make it into a point of self-support instead of what you're doing before, maybe like a distraction only. So it's like, yeah, that's why we say that.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
Like, yeah.
So that's it, I guess. Thanks for the discussion. It was really interesting, at least for me. And yeah, see you around, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.